After my first trip in 1987, I couldn't wait to get back to Thailand, and I did return the next year in 1988. And a good friend of mine called Perry returned with me, and what made it more fun was the fact that Perry had never, I don't think he'd ever been abroad before. He'd certainly never flown in a plane before, and this picture is him at the docking gate, posing by the plane that would take us. We flew Kuwait Airways again, as I'd flown the year before. Now this picture, Perry recently found it and sent to me, and I love it because it's the only picture I think I've got of myself with my camera. The first year I went to Thailand, I used a little Ricoh compact, but after that trip I really got into photography, so I bought myself one of the first Canon EOS cameras, and I just love this picture because it's, you know, I bought all the kit, I bought the tripod and the camera, and that's me setting it up at the boarding gate at Heathrow Airport. I took this picture of Perry at the second that the plane left the ground, you know, just to get the expression on his face. When we got there, we did all the touristy sites, you know, we did the Temple of Dawn and the Royal Palace. I'd done it the year before, but you know, like obviously Perry hadn't done it, so we decided to go over it all again. Now this was the view in 1988 from the top of Wat Arun, the Temple of Dawn. You know, you could climb up it. I mean, you probably still can today, but the thing that really I find remarkable is if you look at the skyline of Bangkok, it's absolutely flat. I believe at that time the tallest building was the spire on top of the Dusit Thani Hotel. Now that was quite recently demolished, but you know, like in the last years of its existence, you couldn't even see that spire. You know, like Bangkok now is just so many tall buildings, and you know, I've got a few shots and it's just incredible how flat that skyline is. When I returned in 1988, the guy called John was still there at the guest house, and he was one of the guys who took me and Adam out on a night in Patpong. You know, the first night in Patpong on my first trip, you know, was a bit of a disaster, but he and a couple of other guys took us out on the second night and we had great fun, so it was good to see John again. I met up with a couple of other good friends out there. There was an Australian lodger called Paul who'd actually taught me quite a lot about Thailand before my first trip, and also my friend Simon who I used to run a business with like many years ago, so it was good to get us all together. Now I seem to remember I met up with this lady called One in the Blue Fox, and we got along, so you know, we decided to sort of, you know, we did sort of things together. We used to go out drinking, and somehow we ended up planning a trip up to Chiang Mai together. And Perry met a lady called Tick. She was quite a character, and this is a picture I took of those two at the Grand Palace. This is Perry and Tick at the little canal near Pratunam Market, and I remember this girl Tick was quite a character. I remember she used to strut around the market stalls at Pratunam, and I remember she bought something like a, you know, like a short skirt or something, and I remember her trying it on, and then she bought it, and then she sort of walked around in it for half an hour and decided she didn't want to wear it anymore, so she just went back to the shop and asked for her money back. One lived with a lady called Dang, and one day they invited me back to their condominium, and that's them sitting there eating Isan food. This is me sitting with Perry's lady Tick in the Blue Fox bar. We'd gone out on a night, we'd all gone on a night out somewhere. I think it was Patpong, that was where this picture was taken. And this is one with Perry. So anyway, we all travelled up to Chiang Mai on the train, and we found this great little bar, place I absolutely loved, and you know, another place that just I think it disappeared in the early 90s, but I used to love it. It was near the Tapei Gate, and it was called Big Bar Beer. I just love that name for a bar. I think if I ever buy a small bar, I'll probably call it Big Bar Beer. I absolutely love that name. And Perry had gone up there on his own, and I'd taken one up there, and just one night in Big Bar Beer, we met this lady, and she decided to sort of like hang out with us and come up to Doi Suthep with us the next day. Of course, I wanted to show Perry Doi Suthep, so we did the same thing again. We rode hired some motorcycles and rode them up there, and You know, it is a really nice bike ride. If you go to Chiang Mai, you've got to do it. And this is another one taken on the lay-by on the way up to Doi Suthep. I do remember that sort of shortly afterwards we had an argument over something, and it was decided that she was going to return back to Bangkok. Now I remember that she was arguing with me. She wanted the money for an airfare back. She wanted to fly back. I wouldn't have it because like flights were quite a bit more expensive back then, so she had to settle for the train. These are hill tribe children who hang around at the bottom of the steps up to Doi Suthep temple. You know, they get you to take their picture and then they say 10 baht, 10 baht. Chedi at Doi Suthep, beautiful place, beautiful place. Yeah, these are just a few pictures I took at Doi Suthep. I remember this one day we decided to ride to Lamphun. Now these days it's kind of a big expressway between the two towns. In those days it was just kind of like an ordinary road, and somehow I lost my traveller's checks. You know, I think it was probably a couple of $100 worth, but it was a real pain. When I found I'd lost them, we had to go and do a police report. So we went to Lamphun police station. And I just remember the policeman, all he wanted to do was talk about English football. He wanted to talk about Peter Beardsley, John Barn. So we just talked to him about football, and he sort of he told us what to write, and we just filled in the forms for the traveller's check refunds. And this is Perry with Dave and Elle, a couple who I still know to this day. And I met them the day after their wedding. They'd been married in Chiang Mai the day before, and this was a restaurant that we used to go and eat breakfast in, owned by a guy called Jimmy. I think it was called The Haven. Just one morning we were having breakfast, and I recognised the girl called Noi, who I'd met the year before, which was pretty cool. So you know, it was good to hang out with her again. So we sort of travelled around Chiang Mai a bit together, and then I took her back to Bangkok with us. Now this is me in a Sam Law, you know, one of the original ones that were kind of pedal driven. They're very rare now. I did see one last year in Lopburi, and there's probably a few around, but you know, in those days they weren't too hard to find. I remember we went out to a few places. We went to the snake farm at the Louis Pasteur Institute. We went there, so some of the pictures were taken there. And also we went to the crocodile farm, which was legendary, and it's actually only just closed. I think in the past year or two it's closed. It was there for about 70 years, I think. That's a king cobra, a huge king cobra. And I don't know, they probably still do, but this is one of the shows where they milk the snakes for the venom so they can use it to make anti-venom. Just some pictures of some of the crocodiles at the crocodile farm. Incredible place. You know what, I remember they used to have shows, and they used to get people to stick their heads in the crocodile's mouth and do all kinds of things. All I remember, they used to do it to the music from Hawaii Five-0. I remember being with Noi, and I looked at this kind of, you know, this thing they used to do with the crocodile's head, and I explained to her that, you know, like the crocodile couldn't move its lower jaw up to meet its upper jaw. It could only snap down its upper jaw. So that was how it worked. And then she just turned around and said to me, no, it's because he's wearing a Buddha amulet. So I didn't argue with her, actually. I liked her explanation better. Noi had to return back up to Chiang Mai. She had to go back up and see her family. So we headed down to Koh Samui, and we stayed again at Sunflower Bungalows. Yeah, great, absolutely great time. You know, like Perry loves Samui just like I did. Yeah, this picture was taken at Chuang Beach, and back in those days there was no airport on Koh Samui, and if you wanted to ride your bike down to either Lamai or Chuang, you know, it was actually a lot of dirt track. I remember especially Lamai, you know, if it was rainy it could be pretty treacherous coming down from the main road. Not even the main thoroughfare through Lamai was paved, you know, it was all kind of dirt track. And they had one discotheque which was called Flamingo House. It later changed its name to Bauhaus, but I think that was the only like nightclub on the whole island. And just a view of Tong Yan Beach, which is where we were staying. Perry's sister flew out to meet us and brought one of her friends, and we all went on a trip to the big Buddha at Bor Phut. And this is the view looking over to Koh Phangan from the Big Buddha. In the old days, before tourism hit Koh Samui, the islanders used to make the money by growing and selling fruit and exporting coconuts, you know. So they used to have a lot of trained monkeys. They'd send monkeys up to pick the coconuts and drop them down. But all the old island people, you know, could all climb up palm trees using their bare hands. They were absolutely incredible. I remember we went on a tour around the island, and they've got the phallic rock, you know, where they've got the two rocks, and they've got they call one the grandfather rock and one the grandmother rock. So we went visiting that place for a day, and that's where these photographs were taken. And this is the pool on the little road that we used to have to ride up to Sunflower Bungalows on, you know. It was just like a dirt track. This was taken on Koh Samui. I've got no idea, I look pretty drunk there. I look like I'm a bit sunburned and drunk. And just a nice view looking out from Sunflower Bungalows. And this picture was taken again at the Sunflower Bungalow, you know. It was a nice group picture of all of us together. One day I hiked back up to the Samui Highlands like I had done the year before with Paul, and that's him feeding the monkey at the top. And this is from up at the Samui Highlands. If you look at that view, I mean, just look how much vacant land there is, you know. It's just wall-to-wall palm trees. You know, I'll do that next time I go back to Samui. I'll hike back up there and have a look and see how developed it is now, because it would be really interesting to compare. And that's a view from Samui Highlands looking out the other way. Again, I would love to take a picture from the same spot again. On my first trip to Koh Samui in '87, I'd met up with a girl called Doreen on Koh Samui, and we'd spent quite a lot of time together, and we kept in contact, and we'd write letters. You know, it was like that in them days. It was snail mail, you know, there was no email or anything like that. So, you know, if you were lucky, you got a letter and it had a couple of pictures in it. And I think I probably sent her money once. I seem to recall I might have sent her £50 once. And anyway, we kept in contact. I was really looking forward to seeing her when I got back. And about 2 weeks before I flew out there, I got this letter saying that she'd met this guy from Germany and that he was going to go out there soon. And I had it in my mind that I might beat him to it, you know. I might get to Koh Samui first. As it happens, I think he arrived like the day before me. And I did meet up with her in Limai, and he was there. And that was the last time I saw her until 11 years later, in 1999. I was having a drink with a friend in Best Friends Beer Complex in Pattaya, and I saw a girl looking at me, and she called somebody from behind the counter and said something to her, and then she came over to me and she said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Carl," and then she went back and spoke to the girl, and then she came back to me and she said, "Do you remember a girl called Doreen?" I said, yeah, Koh Samui, 1987. She said, "Well, that's Doreen there." And so I thought, wow. So I went over and spoke to her, and she sort of, you know, she looked a bit sort of mystified, and she said, "Oh, well, you know, I'm here with my husband. I'm married now." And I said, "Well, that's fine. You know, that's not a problem." And anyway, eventually her husband turned up, and we went out and we had a good night out together. But I thought, you know, it was absolutely bizarre that she recognised me 11 years later. And this picture is all I've got from that night out. And we've never been in contact again. That was the last time I ever saw her.